Hello there, my name's Tom Scholey. I work for Match and Pole Fishing magazines, and I want to talk to you today about selecting the correct float rod. Now this is very important because the tackle you use obviously has a large effect on how efficient you are and effective you are as an angler, targeting whatever sort of target species you're after. There's lots of different things to think about, and I'm going to talk you through them today, from the length of a rod to the sensitivity of the rod and the power of the action of the rod. It all comes into play, and it's all something you should think about before you actually choose what rod you're going to use. Now the main thing you need to think about before deciding what tackle to use is basically what job you're going to use it for. The tackle out there these days from sort of most manufacturers enables you to decide exactly what you need, whether you're targeting big powerful fish on flowing venues or big carp, to whether you need something for more finesse work, for silverfish fishing, for roach or rudd. There's tackle out there that does everything, and I'm going to help you choose the right tackle for the job. Okay, the first thing to think about when deciding what rod to buy is the length of rod. And this depends pretty much on what you want it for. I mean, if you're looking to cast a float a long way, you'll probably need quite a long rod. And the size of the eyes is also very important, because the wider the eye, the more freely the line will run through it. So a long rod with big eyes, obviously you'll be able to cast a long way. The longest rods out there, I mean, you can go anything up to sort of 14, 15 foot for float fishing. And the other nice thing about a rod of this length, it gives you a lot more control. If you're trotting a stick float or a bollo on a river, for example, it gives you the control to pick line up and also get it right out in the flow, and a lot more control when running the float through. The most common kind of rod is generally about 13 foot in length. And this really is very versatile. You can do a lot of things with it. It's not too long to use in a typical commercial fishery situation where you might be casting up to islands, but it's also got quite a bit of length, so if you do need to control a float on a flowing venue, you've got that on your side as well. Now the nice thing about a 13 foot rod, they really do blend both the power that you need to land big fish, because obviously you've got a lot of carbon or a lot of material to soften the fight of the fish, but they also give you the sensitivity. They're a perfect all-round match rod, and that's why they're very popular with beginners, really. So whether you want to fish a stick float, a bollo, a waggler, anything like that, a 13 foot rod is a good choice, because it gives you the capacity to do everything, really. Now the advantage that these offer is because they're shorter, you can cast more accurately at short range. And a lot of sort of commercial fisheries that you see out there now have got islands at sort of 16 to 25 metres away. And for that, if you use a long rod, I mean, you can do it, but it's a lot more difficult to cast, because the trajectory of your cast with the length of the rod is far greater. A shorter rod, obviously, the trajectory is shorter, so you can cast more accurately at close range. Now the other big advantage, which is why they're so popular with matchmen with short rods, is that you can land fish a lot quicker. And the reason for this, when you're playing a fish, obviously when you bring the rod above your head to net it, if you've got a long rod, it comes up further out from the bank. Whereas with a short rod, it'll come up closer in and make it far easier for you to net. Now, I've already mentioned the advantages of each different length of rod, but when it comes down to you making the decision about what rod you want to buy, you need to think about the venues you fish and then suit the length of rod to that. So for example, if you fish mainly sort of rivers or big lakes where you want to chuck a waggler a long way, for example, then a longer rod is probably going to be more advantageous for you. If you do a little bit of that and a little bit of commercial fishing, you want something that does a little bit of everything, the 13 foot model I spoke about would be perfect for that application. With an 11 foot rod, as I've said, you give yourself certain advantages in that you can cast more accurately at a shorter range. But what you've got to bear in mind, if you buy an 11 foot rod, as much as it helps your accuracy at shorter range, you're also limiting the distance that you can cast. Now, the second consideration when deciding what float rod to buy is the size of fish and the species that you're targeting. Now, there's a lot of rods on the market nowadays that are actually labelled power rods, and these are designed for landing carp. However, because they are more powerful, you can find that you have problems bumping off or snapping your hook length on the strike when targeting smaller sea species, simply because the action of the rod is not forgiving enough to take a strike on a lighter line and lighter hook length. With more powerful rods though, obviously you give yourself the advantage of being able to land fish potentially a little bit quicker. But if you're a beginner and quite new to the sport, my personal advice would be to go for something middle of the road that maybe doesn't label itself as a power rod but lets you do everything. Because at the end of the day, if you hook a big fish, as long as you take your time and use the features on the reel, which I'm going to talk about later, you'll land the fish anyway. It's all about the patience. You might not be able to drag them in as you would with a power rod, but you're still going to land what you hook. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. Okay, the next consideration is how much you want to spend. I mean, obviously, different people have different circumstances, so the amount you can afford to spend on a rod, it probably differs from person to person. But what you need to think about, really, is what you need your rod to do and what level of ability you regard yourself as being. Because, I mean, I always use the analogy of golf. You know, you could give an amateur golfer the most expensive kit in the world and they're not going to beat Tiger Woods. So it's all about thinking what you need, what you've got to spend, and making a decision from there. So what does a more expensive rod offer you that a cheaper rod doesn't? Well, the simple answer is quality. And there are several components that go together to make up the action and performance of a rod. Now the first one, if you're starting at the bottom, is the handle. More expensive rods tend to have better quality cork, for example, as a handle. Cheaper rods, you'll often find that they have sort of a plastic effect handle or a foam effect handle, depending on what you go for. The reel seat, again, a better quality rod, a more expensive rod will have a more secure fitting here. It's all basically the quality of the pieces that go to make the rod together. Now the most important thing, in my opinion, is the blank of the rod, which is the material that makes up the main structure that sort of bends when you're playing a fish or gives you your casting action. More expensive rods you'll generally find have a higher carbon content, so sort of cast further, more rigid but at the same time supple. Now a final consideration is the eyes of the rod. The more expensive the rod, the better quality eye it'll have. Like I know a lot of the top rods use Fiji eyes that are made in Japan. But like anything in life, quality comes at a cost. So if you're going to have the best blank, the best handle, the best reel seat and the best eyes, it is going to cost you a few quid. Now I've just run through the advantages that having an expensive rod will give to you. And obviously if you're a top flight match angler, having top tackle that's going to catch you more fish and win you more matches is very important. But if you're just somebody who's taking up fishing for the first time, or maybe somebody who goes 2 or 3 times a year, are you really going to feel the advantage of having top quality tackle? I mean, I've been sort of tackle testing now for 3 years with Match and Pole Fishing magazine. And while the top end tackle is fantastic, it always has been fantastic. What's impressed me the most is the quality of a lot of the more reasonably priced products on the market. And you can now get some fantastic gear for under £100, even under £50. So before committing yourself to a big purchase or remortgaging the house to kit yourself out with the fishing tackle, just ask yourself, what float rod do you really need? So I've already said it's important to think about what you want your tackle to do, and also spend as much as you can to get the best quality of product that you can for the fishing that you're actually going to do. But if you still need some extra help, there's dozens of experts at Fishtec, and the nice thing about the company is all the people who work there are anglers themselves, so they really know what they're talking about and they can help you get the tackle that's right for you.